And hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Chimoge, and this is Chimoge's Comments. Welcome to the live today. Please remember to like the stream as you come on and also share it with other people you know. And if you're watching this in the future on replay, hello to you as well. Please also like the videos you're watching it and share it with people you know. And that would go for you, whatever platform you're watching this on. Currently going live on YouTube. This video is going to go out on all other platforms. So please, wherever you're at, please like and share the stream. And as usual, before I begin today, I'm going to wait either until I get 4 likes or until 4 minutes have passed just to give people time to get on the stream. But of course, today I'm going to be talking about the passing of Queen Elizabeth II and the new coronation of King Charles III. But before I do that, I'm gonna wait until I get 4 likes or until 4 minutes have passed. So um, take a break until then. See you soon. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and get started because 4 minutes have passed. Um, so again, thank you to everyone who's joining. If you want to listen to that song I was playing on your own time, the details are in the description of the video and in the live chat. That's my song actually that I made myself. But we're not here today to talk about my music. We are here today to talk about the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. So, as I'm sure you all know, a couple days ago on September 8th, because today it's September 10th. Yes, it is September 10th today. But a couple days ago, I'm sorry, I feel like this banner is kind of awkwardly in the way. I'm sorry, I don't know. Let's this banner be better. Yeah. That's better. Now you can see my beautiful chin. But anyway, a couple days ago, Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen of England, the longest reigning monarch in the history of England. She was a queen for 70 years. On Thursday, she passed away at the age of 96. So then there are obviously a range of reactions to this. People who, are pro monarchy, generally pro Western, pro white, more moderate, we're all in mourning. Um, and Britain itself has gone into a national period of mourning. Just to give you all an idea of how deep it is, the Premier League, England's highest division of soccer league, and actually all the soccer leagues in England suspended all the games they had planned for this weekend, and there's talk they could even suspend all their games for next weekend. And then the funeral for Queen Elizabeth is going to be held on September 19th, apparently. So I imagine the period of mourning is going to last until then and maybe even a little after. But anyway, so people who are kind of pro monarchy, pro West, pro imperialism were mourning the death of the Queen. And they gave their various tributes and things. And then people who are kind of against most of what the Queen stood for, as the head of the British state, against imperialism, against monarchy, against colonialism, especially those who were came from countries that Britain had colonized and is still colonizing indirectly, through its child, the United States, right? And even on its own power in a lot of cases. Those people were actually, for the most part, I actually saw a lot of them celebrating the death. There are a lot of memes online and things like that shared. A lot of people talking about pouring up liquor or alcohol, whatever, in celebration. You may got a little something in my eye. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm human. I do get things in my eyes. But anyway, I saw a lot of those people celebrating. And my reaction, because there's three main points I want to touch on today. And the first one kind of has to do with my reaction to the passing and my philosophy behind that. My reaction personally was kind of between them. Whereas, as you all know, I'm Nigerian, so not a massive fan of the royal family. Right. So, I certainly was not beside myself in grief. Yet at the same time, I do have to admit, with all due respect to my fellow, I don't know, non-Westerners, my fellow anti-imperialist people, my fellow non-sellouts. I don't know what the collective term is, but with all due respect to those celebrating the death of the queen, I found that detestable as well. I can understand where you're coming from, but I don't think it is ever good to celebrate the death of another human. You don't have to be beside yourself in mourning, because if any of you pay attention to my social media accounts or anything like that, I didn't give any sort of tribute to the queen, right? I don't think you're obligated to mourn every person who passes away, but being silent is different than actively celebrating the death, right? And I don't think you're supposed to actively celebrate the death and actively celebrate the misfortune of another person, even though, like, in this case, this is really a death of natural causes. She was 96. So that's about the best you can ask for as a human being. But nonetheless, right, well, death is not something we want to bring upon ourselves, especially before our time. And for those of you who know how the universe works, those of us who are scientifically literate, knows how the world of spirits works. If you celebrate the death of another human being, the universe is going to send more death to you. So even from a purely selfish standpoint, it doesn't make sense to celebrate the death of another human being. I don't care how bad they were. I don't care if they were Satan incarnate. You should not celebrate their death. Um, that's why I don't celebrate the death of Queen Elizabeth at all. And, human to human, I can even say, my heart goes out to her family because, even though they are terrible people, they're still people. And it's always painful to lose a loved one. So, I think we can show nuanced form of compassion even to our enemies, right? So that's my first point of contention. The Well, not point of contention. These aren't all points of contention, but just that was the first point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make, which is actually related to the first, is that the death of the queen itself did not improve anything for the oppressed people of the earth, right? And this is why you know what I'm trying to say here is that I think those of us who want to come out from under the yoke of imperialism have to get more sophisticated. Because, with all due respect to people, I think a lot of the reactions to the Queen's death have just shown the political lack of sophistication among many of our people, right? Because if you're celebrating the Queen's death, right, putting aside the fact that, like, celebrating the death of another human being is detestable and unwise in and of itself, but putting aside that fact, right, you should only be celebrating if it actually gave you some sort of tangible benefit. But I would say it did not give us any sort of tangible benefit because the system did not change at all. Queen Elizabeth was not by herself just some sort of like Disney supervillain that just with magic was oppressing everyone. And now that she's dead, you know, everything's better. The color gradient got brighter, the animals start dancing, right? We're not in a Disney movie. That's not how it works. She was just one member of the royal family, which is just one group within the entire group of white people generally who are oppressing the world. And if you're looking at it from, a pro-African perspective, white people are just one group among all the Eurasians who are oppressing Africans, right? So I say all this to say because racism is a group phenomenon, right? The death of one person within a group in itself not necessarily going to change that group phenomenon, right? And that's certainly the case here, because it's not like all of a sudden, since Queen Elizabeth has died, the royal family for sure has become less racist, right? And I'm going to get into some potential changes that could be afoot for the royal family in light of this in a bit. But for now, just staying on this point, right? It's not like just because she's gone, all of a sudden the royal family become woke. They're going to re-embrace Meghan Markle. They're just going to give reparations, and then all white people are going to follow suit. That's not true. At the end of the day, a white person who happened to be a leader died. That's it. But the entire, behavior of the group to which they belong is exactly the same. And the entire apparatus they have in place to oppress people is exactly the same. So why are you celebrating? I don't understand. You didn't get anything. It's like you went to bed when things were cloudy, you woke up, things are still cloudy, and you're celebrating. Why? Nothing has changed. Nothing, at least nothing. We cannot confirm that anything has changed, is what I'll say. And in a second, I'll make it clear why I'm saying it in that nuanced way. But to celebrate when you can't confirm that anything has changed for the better doesn't make sense. I think, again, I say that with the utmost of respect, even though I disagree. I understand where those of you who are celebrating are coming from. Someone who hurt you and was part of a larger group that hurt you, had something bad happen to them, so the child within you wants to celebrate. But we have to grow beyond that, because this global struggle we're in, this struggle against white supremacy, this struggle against Eurasian supremacy in general, this struggle against all the general, I guess, for lack of a better term, social ills within the human race that birth those things. This struggle for the human race, this struggle to maintain life itself that we're in. It's not a simple thing. We're not playing checkers. We're not playing patty cake. This is chess. This is very complicated, right? Every single thing that happens has a number of potential implications. You have to analyze those intensely before you make your own move and before you choose to celebrate. So we can't be out here like, 5-year-olds or like zombies, just having simple reactions to individual events. We've got to be better than that. If and by we, I mean those of us who want a better future for the world, Black people, people of other groups, who want to see changes for the better in the human race, both for our own people and for the world in general, right? People who really want to see things improve, people who are, against imperialism, people who are against white supremacy, all these things. We have to be a lot more sophisticated than just celebrating every time a white person we don't like died. I mean, that is the behavior of a zombie who's on their last brain cell, with all due respect. We got to be better than that. Okay? Now, anyway, those are the first 2 points I wanted to make. Those are pretty simple. But the third point I wanted to make, which I'm going to spend more time on because there's a lot more to it, it's the basis for the title of the video, is actually the implication of Charles the Third's ascension to the throne, right? Um, I put the former Prince Charles, now King Charles the Third, in the thumbnail, and I titled this live that Queen Elizabeth's passing and uncertain. Oh, and sorry, what did I title this again, y'all? What did I said an omen of uncertain change. That's what I said. Um, I'm a young man, but sometimes the brain's a little old. I've seen a lot of things, so sometimes I be forgetting. But that's why I eat my dark chocolate, getting that memory back. But anyway, the reason I'm saying that this is an omen of uncertain change is because, in short, the ascension of Prince Charles to the throne could either aid the world in changing for the good, or it can aid the world in changing for the worse. Now, why do I say that? Because first of all, we got to look at the difference between Queen Elizabeth II and her son, Charles III, and the implications for that difference on the wider world, right? So Queen Elizabeth II, right? If you look at her, she was an immensely popular figure, right? Basically, most people in the West liked her. Anyone who's pro status quo loved her. Even a lot of people who were not pro status quo or should not be pro status quo because they're black or just not white, right? Or even just, some sort of lower tribe white, like you're Irish or something. A large percentage of those people were confused enough to like her, right? That's why you see some of them mourning um, publicly and profusely now, right? Again, right? Just because you don't celebrate a death doesn't mean that you have to be bawling your eyes out either, right? You can just go about your day, but these people are doing a lot more than that. So we have to ask ourselves, why is that? The reason she was so popular has to do with two things. One, she didn't give her opinion in public very often, right? So because of that, she caused very few, if any, controversies based upon what most people would call her political opinion, right? Never heard a headline that said breaking news, the queen gives her opinion on welfare, and then people are divided, for example. That never happened. Never happened, right? So because of that, people kind of viewed her as an apolitical figure. And the concept of being apolitical is kind of nonsensical, but without getting into that, that is how people looked at her, right? So people like that are generally going to be more popular than people who give their political opinion very strongly and clearly, right? So she didn't offend anyone with that. So that's the first reason that Queen Elizabeth was popular. The second reason, the second reason that Queen Elizabeth was immensely popular was because the way she carried herself, I guess in terms of her personal character, embodied a lot, if not all, of the values of so-called traditional white culture, right? And there's a lot to unpack in regards to so-called traditional white culture. That term's kind of a misnomer. Historically, white people didn't always behave like that. But without going into all that, right? Because again, I think you all know what I'm talking about when I say traditional white culture. Maybe you could call it Victorian white culture. Um, but just what you call like, conservative values nowadays, right? Um, she comported herself completely in line with those values, right? So you never heard of a marital scandal with Queen Elizabeth. you know um she was modest according to the standards of white society, right? She wasn't wearing like a super short dress or anything that would get people talking crazy. um she, of course, in some sense, like, the very fact that she was queen, you could argue, went against like patriarchal values of conservative white society. But, like, Britain already had a tradition of, having queens, even though they're a patriarchal society, right? Like Queen Elizabeth the First, which is probably their most popular and uh adored monarch ever. Although now, Queen Elizabeth II arguably could have overtaken her in that. But um, you know, very popular monarch. So was Queen Victoria, right? So they have a tradition of having female monarchs that they will adore if they kind of comport themselves in a certain way. Um, so yeah, because of that, right? In addition to all the other values that she's promoted, like, she was a mother, she did have kids, she was married, she had a husband. She had ended up having a good number of grandkids, at least by white standards. Maybe she's underperforming by African standards. But anyway, the whole point is she was like a walking embodiment of these so-called traditional white values in terms of her personal life and personal conduct, right? So because of that, she was just loved um by most people in the West, and even a lot of people outside the West, despite the fact that, she was colonizing them and taking their stuff. Um, right. And because she's so well loved, that gave people more faith in the British government, in Britain as a society, and really in the entire West, because the British monarch serves as a symbol of the entire British government and the British nation, right? Because even though they don't have, um, at least officially, they don't have formal political power anymore, right? Supposedly, Britain is a complete democracy, and the monarch has no real power, constitutional monarchy. Um, and I'll explain why I'm saying supposedly in a second. But even though that's the case, they're still officially the head of state, right? Technically speaking, they do, um, you know, have to give the prime minister permission to form a new government, right? Um, and technically, they're the boss, right? The taxpayers, pay for at like most of their living expenses. They do own their own private property, but it's how the British taxpayers pay however many millions to fund their castles and pay for their meals and security and all that, right? So because of that, people look at the state of the monarch, and spiritually that gives them a sense of the state of the nation, right? Because the monarch is there to really look after the spiritual health, and embody the spiritual health of the British nation. That's part of why they're also the official head of the Church of England, right? Which is, of course, the head spiritual organization in all of Britain, right? So, and then because of Britain's leading role in the West, right? They're still one of the most powerful countries in the West, and therefore one of the most powerful countries in the world. And they gave birth to the current most powerful country in the West in the world, which is the United States, right? Their language, English, the one I'm speaking to you right now, because they beat everyone up and force people to speak it, is the most spoken language in the world, right? It's the language of the elite in our day. Um, so because of that, the British monarch really is key on a symbolic and spiritual level in maintaining the power of the West, right? So it's important that the monarch is held in high regard for this whole thing to be held together, for the Western world order to be held together. It's very important, right? So because of that, right, I would argue that Queen Elizabeth's presence on the throne, and especially the fact that she was there for so long, because the fact that she was there for so long gave people a sense that the British, I guess the British government, Britain as a country, and then by proxy, the entire West was stable, right? Even as there were all sorts of changes going on that 70 years, right? They had to give their colonies in Africa and Asia fake independences, to quell resistance. They fought all sorts of wars. All these things were happening. But still, the fact that she was there gave people some sort of a sense psychologically and spiritually that, okay, this thing is stable. If Queen Elizabeth's still there, we're still going to be here. We're going to be all right. Right. So she, in that sense, she did a very good job at her job, um, because she helped keep everything together in the Western world order. Her son Charles, on the other hand, almost the complete opposite, right? First of all, if you look at his tendencies as a person, he's, by the standards of royals especially, very outspoken. And he outspoken saying things that the royals probably didn't want him to say. Like if they had to pick between all the potential things he could say, right? So decades ago, actually, because the man is 73 now, decades ago in the 80s, he came out in favor of so-called alternative medical practices, right? Which is just what they call non-modern Western medical practices, which again, in general, are perfectly legitimate, but they like to pretend it's not, because they want to make money and rule the world. But without getting too deep into that, he's come out in favor of those practices and has advocated that people use them, right? Which is very controversial in the West. Most people in the West, do not would not agree with that position, and really, arguably, most people worldwide, right? Because due to imperialism, many, if not most people outside of the West have even abandoned their use of that practices, and a lot of places actually look down on them, even more than Westerners do. Well, it's debatable if it's more than Westerners do, but to a large extent, right? People think they're like demonic and all these things. But Prince Charles came out in favor of them, right? Just taking a water break there. So Prince Charles came out in favor of them, and he advocated that people use them. Another thing is that Prince Charles apparently has made it known that he's very concerned about climate change, and advocated that steps be taken for us to be more environmentally friendly. Again, that's a very controversial position in the West and all over the world, right? Although probably more so in the West. I don't know. Well, it would vary region by region, country by country, but outside of the West, I don't know if people argue about climate change as much. I mean, they certainly don't in Africa. I don't know about Asia and South America. But anyway, the point is, right, coming out strongly in favor of the idea that climate change is a major problem that we have to deal with is a very divisive and controversial opinion, right? But it's one that he's um, expressed properly and also been widely reported to have expressed privately, right? So there's that. He's been very outspoken, and it troubled people to the point that he had to come out and say that once he got on the throne, that he wouldn't do that, that he would remain silent, he would remain politically neutral, because again, that's a cultural expectation of the British monarch that they don't give their political opinion, right, publicly. Then, what's even more hot button, actually, is Prince Charles's private life. Because while his mom's private life and the way she carried herself privately was totally in line with conservative white values, Prince Charles was not, right? Prince Charles married Princess Diana famously, and Princess Diana was very popular. However, he cheated on her, and eventually they got a divorce. And then when she later died, there have been many theories floated, that the royal family had something to do with that. And, I can't say I've seen, proof of those allegations. So I'm not really going into that. But all I'm saying is that was out there, and that scandal greatly diminished the image of the royal family, right? With the queen being a bit of more of an exception than anyone else, right? Um, so then Prince Charles gets hurt by that. And on top of that, the woman he was cheating with, the now queen consort, Camilla, was married at the time, right? And then she got a divorce, and then they got married. And that goes completely against conservative white traditional values, which says that people are not supposed to get divorced. People are supposed to be, monogamous. Went completely against that, right? And there's a major controversy, especially because royals are not supposed to marry divorcees. If for those of you who know your history, back in the I believe it was the 1920s, one British monarch actually abdicated the throne because he wanted to marry an American divorcee. And, they weren't having that. The British public and the royal family said, no, you can't do that if you want to be king. So then he said, all right, I won't be king. Right. That's how big of a deal those things are. Right. And obviously, norms have relaxed somewhat because Charles has been able to still be married to Camilla and become king. However, still controversial. A lot of people still view that negatively, very negatively, to the point where for the longest time it was said that when Charles ascended to the throne, Camilla would not be allowed to use the traditional title of queen, right? It was only actually a decree of the queen this year before she passed that allowed her to use that title, right? So I say all that to say his love life damaged his popularity. Then on top of that, you have the more recent scandal with his son Harry and his wife Meghan Markle, right? Obviously, very famously, Meghan Markle married into the royal family, but was not well accepted. She was attacked in the media. She was not protected by the royal family, and then eventually, she and Harry left the royal family and made various allegations about the racism and disrespect that their family had shown them. And it's even highly rumored that once Prince Charles you know expressed concern that his grandchild would be dark, right? So again, that um that sort of negative headline been applied to former Prince and now King Charles, right? So I say all this to say he's not a beacon of stability and unity the same way his mother was. So what does that mean? What does that mean? I think very simply that means that Prince Charles' ascension to the throne has increased the likelihood of revolutions and political change worldwide. Period. Why is that? Because white people in the West, right, who are already fighting themselves, they're already fighting amongst themselves, right? The United States is on the verge of an 1861 part 2. We saw Brexit in Britain and the internal conflict there. We've seen internal conflicts on continental Europe as well, especially in France, right? The war between Russia and Ukraine is raging. So Caucasians are already fighting or about to fight each other, right? We saw January 6th occur in the US, right? So then when they look and they see that the monarch of Britain, which is really kind of the parent state of the entire West, essentially, when they look and they see the monarch of Britain is no longer a beacon of stability, no longer a beacon of unity, but is rather this controversial figure they're not sure how they feel about, on a psychological and spiritual level, that is going to make them less likely to obey the order that he represents, right? So they're going to be more likely to rebel. Now, the same thing is true of non-whites all over the world, whether you be a non-white living in the West, or you're a non-white living, in Asia, Africa, wherever. Same thing is going to be true, right? If you were, a bit of a, go along, get along, black person, and you just loved the royal family, you were dancing, ooh, I love the queen, I love the queen. All of a sudden you see this controversial King Charles on the throne. You remember how he was worried that his grandchild would be dark. Maybe you've imbibed some traditional values, so you're looking at him and you're going, ooh, he's divorced, ooh, you're kind of thinking about those things. And then crucially, the conditions in the place you live are bad, right? The current world order is not serving you. All of a sudden the royal family is not casting the same spell on you that it was casting while Elizabeth was queen. And you're more likely to pick up your tools and go to work changing things, whether that be seceding from the country you live in, whether that be overthrowing the president of the country you live in, whatever it may be, whether that may even be, changing for a push in cultural norms in your country, right? Because also we're seeing huge changes in culture, right, all over the place, right? So basically, his presence just makes revolution more likely across the board, point blank, period. But the reason why earlier I said that I emphasize that the passing of Queen Elizabeth and the ascension of King Charles to the throne is not necessarily, a good change, is because those revolutions he sparks could kind of go either way. And the changes he's bringing about could kind of go either way, right? So again, it's possible it could be positive, right? Because again, as I've made clear, I'm no fan of the current world order. I think a lot of changes need to happen. So if the ascension of Charles to the throne kind of weakens the spell that Britain is casting on the world to get people to go along with the status quo, That could obviously be positive because when they're spurred to change things, people could change things for the better. People could form better governments. People could form better cultural norms. Um, people can, cast off their oppressors. Positive things could happen, right? In particular, the United States could reform itself in a positive way, that makes it both healthier for the people living within the United States, and then also makes it healthier for people living outside of the United States because the United States or whatever is formed from the United States could be less likely and less able to oppress, right? Specifically, I'm saying if the United States is broken up into smaller pieces such that communities can be better served because currently the US is too big. Um, and then if that's done in such a way that, the non-whites living in the US don't get harmed, that could be a positive change there. It could also be a positive change in places like Africa, and to a lesser extent, the Middle East and Asia, especially Southeast Asia. Could be a positive change there if people say, okay, you know what, these colonial borders we've inherited, let's get rid of them. The queen's spell is off of me. Let's get rid of these borders. And in fact, let's form nations in a different way. Instead of trying to form nation states, let's form city states, and let's actually practice, our culture, I guess either the way our ancestors practiced it or in a better way based upon those principles, right? But still freely taking um, from those principles, right? Instead of just copying the West as we're doing now. So that could be positive. However, that's just one possibility, right? And the thing I should add is that it is possible that Charles himself might push for some positive change. In particular, when I look at his past championing of so-called alternative medicines, right? If he kind of takes some of that energy into office, then he could push for reform in the medical system, and I guess you could say medical culture worldwide, so that people embrace more of that ancient medical knowledge, um, instead of just going along with the very flawed and limited medical knowledge that is given out to them, by certain Western corporations and institutions, right? The type of thing that's a norm today, because that does not adequately um, serve people health wise, right? So that could potentially be positive, right? Um, However, it could also be negative because, in particular, when I look at the white revolutionaries in the West, right? The unfortunate truth is that they're not the most stable bunch. And I say that with love. Shout out to all the white revolutionaries listening to this. Have love for y'all as human beings. Hope y'all improve your situation, but we got to be real. A lot of y'all are really crazy. A lot of y'all really just need to sit down and meditate for a few days, right? And why am I saying that? Because if we know anything about white revolutionaries in the world we live in today, it's that they shoot first and they ask questions later, right? They tend to jump the gun and use violence way too early. An example of that is January 6th, actually, all right, which I'm going to go into in more depth on the future on this channel. But essentially, right, that was just needless violence. That was that displayed a lack of political discipline, right? Because the faction that was active on January 6th could have gone about trying to achieve their aims peacefully for a lot longer and a lot more effectively, than just grabbing their guns and busting into the Capitol. That was complete waste of energy. Um, wasted some lives as well, right? So I'm concerned that then if Prince Charles sparks some of these white revolutionaries, to fight, they'll do it in a violent way. They'll cause needless bloodshed. They'll especially target the non-whites who live in the West because they tend to blame us for their problems, even though we're really not the cause at all. So it can have a big negative effect in that way, right? And then I think the other way it could be negative, potentially, is that if um, you know, people start rebelling against the current world order, right? Then the current world order will cease to use, um, I guess they'll become more violent in the ways they repress people because if people are rebelling against the world order, that would mean their propaganda, their kind of hypnosis, their kind of spiritual brainwashing, the kind of thing that the queen was doing by her presence, right? That stuff would be less effective. So they'd say, okay, you know what? Let's use even more guns than we already are to repress people. Let's use even more drones. Let's send more armies out to places like Africa, like Asia, um, because we need to violently crack down because our kind of non-violent oppression, or less violent oppression really isn't working as well. So then that could lead to more bloodshed potentially, right? Um yeah, so again, we really don't know which way this reign of Charles III could go, right? Um yeah, we really don't know which way it could go. So my message um in regards to Prince Charles is really very simply that we should just watch closely and also wait and see, while of course also working hard to pursue our own aims, right? Working hard to better the countries that we live in, the countries we come from, but then also keep an eye on that situation because it could either help us or it could hurt us, right? With Queen Elizabeth, you kind of knew what you were getting. With Charles, you don't really know what you're gonna get. We don't really know what exact effect um it's gonna have on people. Sure, we know it's gonna make people more likely to rebel. It's gonna make people more likely to try and change things. But whether or not they change things in a positive way or in a negative way, um, that's something that we can't be totally sure of. So really, this is just a reminder to watch this space and certainly don't throw up your hands and celebrate just yet for any reason because we have no evidence that things have improved. But anyway, that's all I got to say. Thank you so much again to everyone who joined me tonight to watch. Again, please like the stream and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe on YouTube. And if you're watching on another platform, whether it be, Rumble, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, please also subscribe to or follow my account, my channel. Please also share this with people that helps the channel grow. And if you want to help the channel even more, you can join my Patreon. I'm going to have exclusive content going up there. And then you can also donate. I guess the link to the Patreon is in the description of the video as well as in the live chat. The link to donate is in the same places, and it's also right there. You know, you can use Cash App, you can use PayPal, you can use Venmo, you can even directly use your card if you so wish to donate. We have various methods, but please do that as well. That helps the channel. But if nobody else has any questions, doesn't look like anyone else does, then I'm just going to go ahead and call it a night. Remember, I do these live streams every Saturday. Try to do them at 4 p.m. Eastern time, but often it can end up being later than that, like today. But do tune in every Saturday. If you click the bell icon on this channel, you'll get an alert whenever I'm going live, whenever I have a new video up. So yeah, and then on my other channel, Chimoge's Comments America, go live every Sunday. Tomorrow I'm going to be reacting to a video live, so please check that out. But again, I just thank you again. I think I'm going to call it a night. So, have a good rest of your evening, and see you all tomorrow on Chimoge's Comments America, and see you all next week on this channel. All right, goodbye.